Good afternoon, everyone. Today is November 17th, 2021, I believe. We haven't hit 2022. I'm happy to see everyone here live and in the replay on YouTube. Today, we have a very special guest, Eric Capperell, who is with Focal Point Business Coach. He coaches CEOs and helps people just be more happy in business and live a life they love. Um, One of the things that I like about Eric is that he has a directly worked with Tony Robbins. He knows about that. I love Tony Robbins, and that is always a wonderful viewpoint because he really empowers people. So, with that being said, I will pass it over to Eric, and I'm happy to be here today. So, happy that you're here today. So, thanks, Eric.
Well, thank you, Lainey. Thank you for having me on here. I love this time of year because we're approaching winter, and winter is that time of year where you can either huddle up and shiver and freeze to death, or you can go skiing. So I approach winter as if it was the best time of the year. And with the new year coming, I like to be super proactive and help people think about their businesses from a strategic viewpoint, looking way ahead. I appreciate that really nice introduction, Lainey. That was great. I have a hybrid coaching background and business development background. I am a senior trainer in Tony Robbins' company. What that essentially means is I've gone through every single program that he offers, and now I am certified to teach it and train it with his company and outside of there. So I love breathing life into that. So some of the concepts that I'll address tonight are definitely some things that Tony has shared over the years that I embody and try to teach and coach from. I do work with Focal Point, which is an international company. And one of the things I love about it is, I don't have the book here. I thought I had the book. Oh yeah, here it is. Brian Tracy is pretty big as well. He's on the Mount Rushmore of business development and coaching along with Tony. And Brian founded Focal Point. So as I said, I take a hybrid approach. So I take the best of what everybody offers and offer it. So tonight I want to talk about planning for 2022. I'm going to do a PowerPoint because I think a lot of people are super visual and need to see the concepts illustrated. And I want to tell some stories throughout there and invite you to jump in with any comments or questions that you would have as we move forward. One of the things that I like to really frame up when I talk about planning is in my work, the work that I do, I come across all different types of folks. And I find that the ones that take a proactive approach to their business, where they're always looking ahead and planning ahead, I think of it in the metaphor of like playing chess, anticipating your next couple of moves and what are the consequences of those moves, versus being reactive, where you're just dealing with things as they come at you, like Lucy and Ethel with the conveyor belt with the chocolate coming at them, and they can't handle it, and it's just making a mess. So another way to think of it is, you are causing what's happening versus being at the effect of it. So I really make sure that people foundationally are coming from a proactive standpoint when they plan and addressing all the areas that they can. This is something from Tony's work that I really embrace. I think of it in a lot of different ways, but Jack Nicholson in the movie The Shining, all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. It can't be all about work. It has to also represent all your areas of your life. And when you start thinking about what those areas are, there's like 6 wedges of life here in the pie. And so the key word here is mastery. Do you pursue mastery? So absolutely, emotional mastery is essential for business mastery, in my opinion. Your ability to be an effective communicator, your ability to master relationships, the needs and the wants, and being supportive of your clients, your team, whatever that might do. Physical mastery is huge. Your body, does a lot more than just carry your head around, you know? So some of my favorite stories are, I've had clients that have physically transformed themselves. When I met them, they were well overweight and divorced and still complaining about their divorce 10 years later. And then the transformation that went on when they actually took that on, and how their business took off. So I could keep talking about that, but you know, these areas, having a personal vision for your life and attaining to those things, you know, like, you know, contribution and spirituality, you can frame that however you want, but the secret to living is giving. Patricia, when I watch you show up in Provisors, you're a giver. You come from abundance and it just flows out of you. There's a spirituality with it that you're a magnet. It's really fun to watch you. It just flows out of you. You know, your purpose with your career is evident. It's just been fun to be around you. So I think you have a strong vision for that and how you give back to others. You come from abundance. It's really cool to watch. Ultimately, I'm really into Kaizen and Kanai. Kaizen is a Japanese concept that's morphed into Kanai as well. It's, you know, this whole acronym of constant, never-ending improvement. I teach values around having conversations with values, and my best clients are the ones who believe in that you're never done. There's always something else. You're always looking ahead, and there's no like, well, that was good, I'm done now. You know, I'm going to rest on my laurels. The world as we know it is constantly evolving. Lainey and I, you are talking about technology and the advances in the last few years with technology and how that impacts us. And look at us showing up on Zoom nowadays, where that wasn't really the case a few years ago. So, you know, you're really looking at the past does not equal the future. A lot of businesses that I've come into relationship with, their past is not equal to their future. I have a business owner that was doing 10 million in revenue a few years ago and down to 2 million, lost 40 people on the team because they were resting on their laurels. So they brought me in to help with that. I like this whole Johnny Appleseed mentality. It's really just, you know, planting the right seeds with the right people and watering them and tending to them, and you will grow your orchard. The Chinese bamboo tree, it's a pretty good Chinese proverb. No matter how much you water and tend to these little bamboo trees, they don't grow for years, but then in 1 year, they can grow as much as 90 feet. You just never know when your business is going to explode. So having a proactive approach, looking at how your business plan feeds into your ultimate life plan. You know, Lainey, and you and I were talking earlier today that, you know, isn't it cool when your work becomes a lifestyle versus a job? It's like, I get to hang out with these people that I bring into my life. I get to recreate with them. I get to have fun with them. I get to, you know, network with them in really cool ways. It's more than just a job now. It's a life plan. It's a lifestyle. And I think whatever you do, if you're not reaping the benefits of it financially and, you know, feeding into your life plan, then are you really enjoying what you're doing? You know, I come into connection a lot with people that are really not happy with their business, and it's really because they're not enjoying it. So just looking for ways to breathe life into that and getting the fruit from their labor. There's a lot of things to this, but it kind of goes back to that areas of life mastery, and financial mastery is one of those areas. Ultimately, people often ask me, what is it you do? What is it you're really approaching? Business is a game. Business is simple if you really think about it. You're looking at management systems. What are the systems that I have within my business, and how do I manage that? What is my acumen in my business? You know, am I an expert in my field? What is it I actually do? And do I have a value proposition? And do people understand it? And will they buy it, right? So your business skills, your ability to deliver what it is you do, whether you're a high performing attorney or a high performing, you know, branding expert and marketing expert. Ultimately, it also comes down to your ability to communicate. I really strive to make sure that people have communication mastery. You know, there's so much that goes into communication. Does your client really understand their business, and do you really understand their business and how to serve it, and vice versa? And does your team If you have more than one person in a business, you have a team. So your ability to really effectively communicate is key. Ultimately, if you own a business, you're a CEO, you're a leader. So what are the ingredients of leadership? It's pretty much here. My favorite one out of all of those is courage. My definition of courage is moving forward, even if you don't have all the X's and O's in place, just moving forward, fall forward faster. Don't get caught up into analysis paralysis. Know that you want to move forward, take a chance. If it doesn't work out, ask yourself what's great about that and readjust, you know? So ultimately, these are the qualities that I coach when I help people put together a plan and work with their team if I'm working with their team. I think, you know, everybody knows that you need to have goals and you need to have SMART goals. What's the importance of it? It's an opportunity for you to become more. Every year I have my clients or the people I work with write down their goals and the areas that they're looking to improve on and get really, really super clear and keep like a goals record. And it's fascinating to hear at the end of the year when they tell me, oh my goodness, I accomplished all my goals. And it was because we kept a light on it. We kept talking about it. We kept revising it. We kept holding a standard to live by and really keeping the consistency there. And, you know, there's a quote by Tony. I love this stuff. Tony has definitely been a huge part in my life. I know him personally, and I look for quotes. So that's a great one. Ultimately, I turn shoulds into musts. So I'm looking to help people like, what is it that you really want to do? And they'll say, I should do this. I should do that. I try to help them turn it into a must. This is the formula for turning a should into a must. So if it's not written down, it's not a goal. If it doesn't have an expiration date, it's not a goal. A goal should be like a carton of milk in a fridge. It's not supposed to be there forever. You're supposed to drink it and nourish from it. Otherwise you throw it out, right? And then ultimately, you know, it has to be achievable by unordinary means. There needs to be that little extra to make it extraordinary, a little extra effort, a little extra development. But ultimately, goals are essential with business development. And I'm going to give you some of the formulas for that in just a minute. So people often ask me like, okay, so what am I actually developing here? You know, what am I putting, you know, into my plan? Well, you have to look at what are your assets? What are you working with, right? You have a question, Lainey?
Yeah, is it okay if I interrupt you for a sec, or do you want me to wait till you're done with this slide?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, so Patricia wrote something. And we were texting about it's how important it is to differentiate goals from like a to-do task list.
Mm-hmm.
And so Patricia and I were texting. I think it'd be great if you could speak on that. Tasks are stuff you have to do. Goals are something that you want to do to move you down the road. So can you talk a little bit about
Yeah,
tasks
absolutely.
goals?
The best way I could probably address that is ask yourself the why question, not the what and the how. Like, what do I got to do? How do I do it? That's fine to do that, and you have to do that. But the what and the how don't go first. And that's usually what's on a task list, right? The honey-do list, honey do this, honey do that, whatever you want to call that. I often ask the people I work with, like, why do you want to do that? If it doesn't really fit into your values and your purpose and the target areas that you're really working towards, it's probably not the most impressive goal. It's really not something that's aligned with like really the way you're using your time and the way you're scheduling towards a goal. So I teach time economics. I teach allotting time towards the value of those goals. So I like to think of it as rock, sand, and water. If you ever want to watch a really cool video, Stephen Covey did a video. It's 8 minutes long at Stanford University where he has these like physics students, like the best of the best students in a lab. And he teaches them how to address managing time. I won't go into all the belabor it, but you put your rocks in first and then you fill in the sand. The sand will take up the cracks between the rocks. They're the less important goals. And then the water is all those things that I have to do. The what, I have to do this, I have to do that. What do I need to do now? But if you're not addressing those rocks first, like the things that are going to really move your business forward fast, then you're kind of wasting your time. So that's really like the way I think of it, Patricia. So why do you want to do it? How is it going to, who's it going to benefit? How's it going to benefit? Can I get maximum benefit out of doing that versus just doing something for the heck of it? So ultimately, I think I covered this, but when you look at your assets, did that answer your question, Patricia? Great. So ultimately, I think you have to look at your assets. What is it I really value? Obviously, your clients are number one. If you're not creating value for your clients, then you're potentially losing them. You're losing opportunities with them. Your number one goal there is to create raving fans with your clients, right? So again, when I'm showing up in a provisors meeting and people are espousing the virtues of Patricia, they're raving about her. I mean, their face is like, don't even go anywhere else. Just work with Patricia. Trust me. That's the definition of a raving fan. She's created such value, right? The thing I heard the other day that really perked up my ears about you, Patricia, was, Patricia will take the time to go and have a glass of wine with you or have a meal with you. That's extra value. She's not charging for that. She's creating friendship. She's creating value. She's connecting to the person. And that's what people want, is connectivity. So you have to think of your clients as assets. It can take a lot of time to get new clients. It can cost money, but to keep a client and have them become a raving fan, or, someone who really espouses who you are to others, even when you're not around, that's pretty cool. So developing your network obviously is a huge asset. Who's in your network? Are they elite champions? People who refer to you, they're in the same lane as you, but they're in a non-compete zone. Are they a super champion? Someone who can introduce you to someone who's 1 degree away from you that absolutely would want to work with you? Or are they a champion? They know you, they like you, they trust you, and they want to help you. They might even become a client. So thinking of your network from a strategic standpoint, targeting that from a time standpoint is really key. Obviously, your team is a huge asset. If you have a team, you have to nurture that. I was looking at some statistics recently with San Francisco. The average executive only stays for 1.75 years. They leave constantly. And when you ask people why they leave, they'll say it's because of money or the drive. Maybe it's not the drive anymore, but it's really because they don't feel valued or they don't have an opportunity to grow. That's what really people want. They want to be part of something special. So how can you create acknowledgements? How can you create opportunities for growth, promotion, whatever that might be with your team? Who's on your team? Who do I need on my team? And are they an asset, right? And then ultimately time is an asset. I really like thinking of time structurally too. This doesn't apply to every business model, but I like to address this from a conceptual standpoint. People often tell me, well, I only really want to work 4 days a week, Eric. That's my life vision. Like I particularly don't work every day of the week either. So I set up my schedule to be a winning schedule, right? So in this model, this is a 4-day-a-week model. So it's like, pull out your 2022 calendar and start crossing off the days that you want to take a vacation. I'm working right now with a couple of attorney clients that are like, yeah, well, I would love to take a vacation, and I would love to take a vacation where I don't work. And I'm like, well, how important is that, right? So it's like structuring their calendar in a manner where they can actually go on 2-3 vacations a year and have a plan in place where someone is covering for them, or they've done the work to the degree where they don't have to work when they're gone. There's a way to do that. So the step one is pull out a calendar for 2022 and start crossing off the days that you're not going to work. Are you not going to work on your holidays, or are you going to work on your holidays, right? Are you going to put in some vacation days? This is not a really ambitious vacation plan, but everybody deserves at least 8 days a year of vacation, right? Some people like to, put in some continuing ed. That might be they're contributing to a marketing group or a law group or an association where they're going to be a speaker or presenter, and that's an opportunity to give back. So you have to put that in your calendar in advance as much as possible. But ultimately, know how many hours that you're working a year. It's pretty wild when you really look at this model. In this model, if you're working 4 days a week, that's 1,480 hours a year. How do you want to use those hours? And what are you worth an hour? Again, this model doesn't apply for everybody. Some of the businesses I work with, I help them determine what do they need to make if they really want to be $1 million business, right? I'm working with someone right now that wants to go from 600,000 to 1 million. So we've set that goal in place for the next year already. We're working on that. We have a strategy for that. Who needs to join their team? What are those responsibilities? Where are we going to anchor for marketing and so on and so forth? And then really it comes down to, thinking of your worth in a day and an hour. And you're not necessarily going to make that every day. Some days are going to be bigger than others, but that's what it would take to be $1 million business if that's where you're heading, right? But you get to design what's important to you, right? Not everybody's on the same trajectory. And again, this is just a very skeletal model. I work with some really robust businesses that have a lot of moving parts. I work with solo entrepreneurs that this would definitely apply, or small teams. So ultimately, you can start to play with it. Well, how many days do I want to work? Right? So Patricia, you've been around a little while. You're a mature business. You may want to play with this a little bit. You may want to play with hey, I only really do want to work 183 days a year, but I want to be open 235. Who's on my team? What are their skill sets? What am I going to have them do? Contract attorney, junior attorney. What are those skill sets that I can bring on? Right? And how do I nurture that so I can attribute to that goal that I have of making that money, but I can still make that same amount of money by working less. I don't have to work as much. I can develop my team. I can develop my business in other ways. Ultimately, I try to make sure that financial mastery is a part of the equation. The ultimate monitor really is your profit and loss, your balance sheet, and your cash report. If you're not looking at those and looking at those regularly, then Houston, we have a problem, right? I was in a conversation with someone the other night, a client of mine, where we were having this conversation and it came down to, why only work with my bookkeeper once a year? That's a very reactive model. She's doing well and she has the potential to do great. Now I'm making sure that, hey, we need to look at your expenses. We need to look at where we can adjust your profitability centers. There's 7 areas that we can adjust at any time, 1, 2, 3 degrees, which will lower your overhead and increase your revenue. And by increasing your revenue, we're able to increase the income, the security, which is, liquidity. Do you have 6 months of liquidity for your business? So if you got hurt or you were not able to work, you can cover yourself. And are you putting at least 10% of your monies back into investments? So we have a question.
How often do you recommend we see our bookkeeper? I see mine every month, but what do you recommend?
I think it depends on your business model. I mean, if you're a solo entrepreneur, you may want to look at it once a quarter. I don't think you need to look at it constantly, but you do set these benchmarks for costs, right? And you set it and you know where your money's going and how much bang am I going to get for my buck. If you're a more robust business with 10, 20 or more employees, I would say look at it once a month for sure.
If you want to grow that way, maybe if you want to grow to a certain amount.
Yeah. I mean, the interesting thing about your numbers is they tell a story. The story is formed by the questions you ask by looking at your numbers. If you know the right questions to ask, then you know the story that your numbers are telling you. You know how to adjust midstream, right? It's like Frogger. You know where to move so you don't get squashed.
Well,
right?
and I would
Roger
also, and
reference, but
also too, it's depending on where you are in the maturation process of your business. Are the numbers right? Because that's like a key component, right? Because you could look at it all day long, but if it's not matching up appropriately and it's not being, matched up,
I
you
agree. I mean, I think you need to reconcile your numbers
reconcile. That
frequently.
was the word I was looking for. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's as simple as looking. I mean, it, this may sound very elementary, but you need to have one business account and one business credit card in most cases, unless you're a really robust company. So in that essence, you're looking at your deposits and reconciling to make sure that your reports are accurate. You're looking at revenue versus cash and really understanding the difference there, because cash is king. If you don't have good cash flow, you might be generating really good revenue,
Right.
but it's
Sounds
getting sucked
receivable.
up by your overhead. So this is a very rudimentary model. It's very simple, but ultimately I've taken on businesses that they've had like 90% overhead and the owner's like just above water and like complaining, like, I'm not really living the life I thought I would be. I don't have enough money to put my kids through college. I just took on a client the other day that he's about 48 years old and has 3 kids. And he's like, I need to start thinking about college. And I didn't tell him he was wrong. I'm like, yeah, we can do that. And let's start looking at where we can adjust your overhead and increase your revenue and your cash. And we can stream that into security and investments, a 529 being one of them. So ultimately it's never too late, but understanding how to manage this is essential. I would say 80% of the clients I've had over 20 years do not really look at their books. They do this a lot. They trust. They're like, oh, my accountant does that, or my bookkeeper does that. And that's fine, but you should be in relationship with those people and sitting down quarterly at least and reviewing your books and making sure that you know your expenses and you know what's coming in, and then benchmarking your monies appropriately for the wealth buckets that you want to create. Um, I could keep going on that, but this is the simplest formula in the world. So this is not Lewis and Clark. You're not starting off and crossing the country and having no idea what you're going to encounter. You should not be getting attacked by native tribes or mosquitoes and malaria and being swept away by big rivers. You need to know where you're going. And so you start with your outcome. I need to make X amount of dollars this year in order to put X amount of dollars away in these areas. I need to know, I want to bring and onboard this many team members in these respective areas by such and such a date. I want to have so many clients by such and such a date, because that'll drive revenue, which will drive those areas that I want to address into the business and continue to develop my business. So now know your outcome. I'm going to show you that in just a minute, where you're going to put your intentions. I addressed this a minute ago with Patricia's question, like with goals. So this is a goals formula, ultimately. If you're not into relationship with why am I doing it, then don't do it. If it's like, well, I have to or whatever, it's probably not the most impressive goal that you could put in place. Why do you need to do this? Because it'll allow me to buy my dream house. It'll allow me to put money into my college education for my children. That's a strong why. Now, because I have to do it, or, I won't, for whatever reasons. So if you have a strong enough why, and I play a lot with this with my clients, it's like, well, why are you doing this? And how important is this, right? If they're like, yeah, I really want to do this, then let's do it. Take action, take massive action. Don't be a dabbler, right? And, we all have a lot of areas that we have to address in our life, but I usually have 2 to 3 to 4 goals that I'm working on with my clients at any given time. And we could easily have 20, but most of those are front burner goals, because you can link up the horse to the wagon. When you get the horse goals done, you can attach the next goals. So that's the structure of developing an annual plan. If you're not monitoring those goals, then I don't know what you're doing. So ultimately, how do you want to check in and look at the scoreboard and discuss it? Are you getting the results that you want? If you are, Rinse, lather, and repeat. Keep doing that. It's working. How else can you improve it is a good question. What else can we attach to that? But if you're not getting what you want, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. You want it. We might need to revise what we're doing. Time economics wise, networking wise. Are we getting the target clients that we want that are going to generate the revenue? I was working with someone the other day and they were like, yeah, I'm working with an attorney that she's an injury, a personal injury attorney. Now she only goes for certain types of cases where she used to take everything. Now it's just this really narrow dive. I have a target client and people know that. She changed her approach and her revenue's jumping now. It's really fun to watch that. Ultimately, here's the areas that you want to put your attention on. So when you start to think about like, okay, what am I addressing in my business, right? Each one of these areas has a drop-down menu that's specific to your business, right? So obviously, you know, these are the most important areas that you're going to address. The money of your business, right? So what's coming in, what's going out, and how am I addressing that? How am I monitoring that? I'm going to show you more detail on that in just a minute. Your organization and systems, really, you know, these are your repeatable business systems. You're not changing everything all the time. You know, it's like, I see a lot of businesses change their technologies constantly. Technology goes into this as well, but it's separate. But it's ultimately your protocols, the way you get from point A to point Z with a client within your network, whatever you're doing. Sales and marketing, nothing happens unless you have the ability to externally market and internally market. Sales is nothing more than influence. Are you influencing with what your customers want and how you engage them? Technology is rapidly evolving. There's a lot to be said there. We're going to talk about that in just a minute. And then people. People are your clients and your team. So these are the areas that you want to focus in on and develop a strategy for each one of these, or improve on your current strategy that you have in place. You're getting some results, but maybe you're not addressing everything. Ultimately, at the heart of that is the vision, right? What's my vision? So there's two types of vision when you start to think about this. There's a structural vision and a philosophical vision. The structural vision is really, what do I need to bullet point for each one of these and what's my plan? The philosophical vision is, you know, what do I want my business to look like? How do I want to be known? Where do I want to be in 1 year, at the end of 2022, in 3 years, in 5 years? You're thinking about it in a philosophical way. Where do I want to live? Where do, you know, how much money do I want to make? That kind of thing. It ultimately gives you this sense of mission. So when people ask me, what do? I say I help owners with their vision. And then if they have a team, I help the underlying mission of the team match up with the vision of the owner in a sequential, logical way so that they get what they're planning for. So ultimately, these are the types of things that we address with vision. I'm kind of flying down this because I only have so much time, but these are the types of questions you want to ask yourself with vision. I've already kind of articulated on that earlier, but, you know, ultimately, you know, do I own my business, or am I okay leasing it, or am I okay working from home? If I do own a space, is it the appropriate amount of size, or am I outgrowing it? Is it in a prime location? Does it appear the way that I speak about my business, or is it a little shabby or outdated, or does it need a new appearance, a new makeover? Is it clearly articulated? I work with a lot of businesses that they're not really able to articulate what it is that they do very well. They haven't really learned how to do that. So if you can't do that, your target audience, your prospects, even your clients don't even really know the full suite of what you offer. I have a huge suite of offerings, and most people don't know that because I don't spend the time articulating it. But when I get the opportunity for a one-on-one, I might do that, right? So ultimately, these are the types of things that you have to ask yourself when it comes to addressing your vision. And then you have to have these types of qualities for being a leader. I run into a lot of people who are in these traps where they get stuck. And ultimately, these are the things that I usually work on with them to get them unstuck. It's like, okay, well, let's talk about what your belief system is. They have some type of limiting belief. They're all bound up about it. So I get them unbound and get them looking at the possibilities and choosing a possibility, a choice, looking at perspectives and then choosing one and then putting it into place with a plan that is optimistic that it's going to work, and you've got the preparation in place and whatnot. You're able to articulate it well to others and then move forward. All right, so here we go. We're getting into some of these engines, right? So what's tricky when you talk about it from a generic standpoint is if I were talking to a room full of lawyers, I would have this represented a little bit differently, or a room full of marketers. But ultimately, these are some of the areas that you want to look at with your technology, right? I would say just in the last year, I've added 5 new technology pieces to my suite of what I use to do my business and what I use to help my clients do their business. And, you have to ask yourself, have I mastered it? Am I able to really fully utilize it well so that it's to the benefit of my clients, my network, my team? One of my favorite stories is I was working with someone that was the office manager in a very mature business. And I asked her about her software that she was using, of which I just so happened to be an expert in. And I asked her, how do you use that software? She's like, oh, I've been using it for 30 years. I know it really, really well. I'm like, great. Can you run me these 3 reports? She didn't even know how to run the reports. So she wasn't really looking at the robustness of the data and using it to help her make decisions. So I had to show her how to do that. So ultimately, do you benchmark some time in to master your software? Do you train your team on how to use it? Are there possibilities to educate your clients with the softwares that you use or the technologies that you use? Or is your software really depictive of what you do, and is it really high level, or is it just run of the mill? So I'm not getting into specifics with that because that could go down a rabbit hole, but
I have a
technology.
quick question about the
Yeah, go
software
for it.
thing. I was
Yeah.
on a meeting the other day, and the owner of the company was like, "Oh, that's too advanced for me, that Zoom thing. I'm not going to get involved in it. I have my assistant do that. That's way over my head." Do you think that like that kind of like playful kind of admission of like not being up to date is okay for a business position? Because people are like, whoa, that's way over my head. I have my admin do that. And it's basically just like sharing, downloading a file and
Yeah.
sharing it.
Well,
So,
the first rule of business is you have to be honest. If you can't see the gap between where you are now and where you could be or may need to be, then you're fooling yourself, and then you're not really fooling others. So I'm really into delegation. I mean, I think if an owner's admitting, I don't know how to do Zoom, but my assistant does, then maybe the next step for the owner is maybe you should set up some time with your assistant where she can teach it to you, like the 2 or 3 functions that you might want to use, and just not make it so complex, because it's kind of like my dad who's 80 years old. He'll buy a new iPhone 13 and he'll only use it to text. He doesn't really realize he's holding a computer that can run his whole life if he wanted to, but he'll make up a story about, oh, I don't need this, I don't need that. And then I'll show it to him. He's like, that's pretty cool. And then he'll spend a few minutes learning it, right? So everybody makes up a story about technology and how important it is, or some people are scared to embrace technology. There's technology immigrants and there's technology natives. So the longer you've been around, you're usually an immigrant with technology. You have to really take the time to learn it. Where a digital native, like my 11-year-old daughter, could easily pick up a piece of technology and teach it to me in minutes if she wanted to, that I might not know. So, it's just identifying who can I delegate it to, who can I learn it from, and embracing that. So the finance engine is really an important one, obviously, right? I mean, if you're not making money or managing your money, both for your life plan and your business plan, then you're not really swimming and you're potentially sinking. So again, this is not industry specific, it's industry agnostic, but at the end of the day, there's a lot of things to be thinking about when it comes to addressing your finances. I submitted an article on raising your fees on LinkedIn recently that I wrote that I just think it really nails it. Um, yeah, the cost of living's going up. Now, do you constantly raise your fees? No, but if you're providing great value and your customers growing because of that value, then you're worth what you charge, right? So ultimately having a fee strategy, I mean, I work with some attorneys, Patricia, everybody's worried about billable hours all the time and what they charge. And some people, it seems like the standard is $500 an hour for an attorney, but then there are others that are way, way more. So just knowing your fee strategy is huge, and being able to equate that to the value that the person's getting versus, wow, that costs too much, right? So ultimately, having these types of things in place is huge. I ultimately addressed this earlier, but this whole numbers meetings, if you have a few people that work on your team, be thinking about how they influence the numbers. What's the value that they bring in, right? And what value can they bring in, and how do they impact the numbers? Having numbers meetings is really crucial, in my opinion, if you're developing your business. Putting your numbers out there and controlling the story around the numbers versus never looking at the numbers. So again, this has a lot to do with how sophisticated and robust is your business. Some businesses would never not think of not having numbers meetings, but then the numbers do tell a story. And then how do you attach commitment and accountability to the next level with your teammates so that they're growing and the numbers are growing? Ultimately, we talked about organizations and systems being one of those 5 engines. Again, this is industry agnostic, but at the end of the day, I like this one where the new client experience, right? I don't care what business you're in. You really want to take some time and design. I mean, I love your design boutique, Lainey. I mean, you're into design, right? And the aesthetics of that, right? What kind of aesthetic experience do you want to design for your new client where they're just like, wow, it's like the V8 moment. This is great. This is what I want. I want to stick around here, right? Versus a very transactional experience, which is part of your business offering, of course. But how do you onboard a new client and really make their day, make their week? How do you give extra value to them beyond what you're billing them? How do you create an experience, right? So it's the Joy to V moment, right? You can stay at a Holiday Inn, you can stay at a Joy to V. What are you leaving on the pillow? What are they taking away from it? Is it just a little Thin Mint, or do they really get something that's like, oh, wow. It's like, wow, this is amazing. I'm so glad I'm a client with these guys, right? Ultimately, monitors, I spoke briefly about that. I use a lot of different monitoring systems with my clients and with my own business, keeping track of, am I getting results of what I do within my systems and the way I organize it. So monitoring the results of what you're doing with the people that you're working with or serving, making sure that they're getting the results. Lainey, you shared something once with me in a conversation where you have a whole quality assurance, quality control checklist that you do with everybody. And it's benchmarked into your calendar with your team and with your clients. You're meeting with your team first and making sure that they met those benchmarks. And then you have that proactive quality where you go to the clients having known that you met those benchmarks. That's an amazing client experience. It's timelined correctly. You're crossing off these things. They know it. They see it. Your team can take that on, and you can go off and do your thing. You don't even have to always be a part of that. That's what I mean by organization and systems. Having these protocols in place that you're delivering what you said you were going to deliver, right? And it's repeatable. So these are good things to look at. Ultimately, a lot of times when I work with folks, they have people on their team that really don't have clearly defined expectations around their job, a job description. And, I'm helping someone right now with a 30, 60, 90-day evaluation, goal setting process with onboarding a new person in their company. because you don't want just the clients to have a new client experience. You want a new employee experience. People want to know what they're expected of and what they're being measured for, and they want to contribute to that. They want to ring the bell and say, I'm doing a great job, even before the boss asks them, are you doing a great job? They can show evidence of it. So these are those repeatable business systems you're always looking at. And then obviously you have the sales and marketing engine. This is huge. This is in Laney's wheelhouse. Ultimately, these are some of the bullet points that you want to be thinking about. One of the things that I really think is crucial, everybody thinks of marketing as that advertising and external message. You're really managing 3 S's with your business, and I want you to think of it this way. You're managing your state, the way you put yourself out there, the way you communicate with people. You're managing your story, the story you put out there about who you are, what business you do, but you're also managing the story that's out there about you. Because in the absence of meaning, people make stuff up. Well, I don't really know what Eric does. I think he's a life coach. It's funny, like one of my best friends the other day is like, how's your life coaching business? I'm like, I'm not a life coach, I'm a business coach. Let me tell you more about that, right? So I had to manage that story. And he's down in the tech sector and he knows people that I know. So it was like, wow, I got to manage that, right? That's part of my external marketing message. But if your internal marketing doesn't match up with your external marketing, Houston, we have a problem. Let me give you an example. I called to make a vet appointment for my dog the other day. And these, the owner of the company and the team that's went in it, the message they put out there externally is really beautiful, and they are a good business. But when I call in and I'm dealing with the person on the phone to set my appointment, the message is way off. There's a little tone of like snarkiness or passive aggressiveness there, like I'm wasting their time or something as someone calling in, and it doesn't match up with the message that I want to hear. So the internal marketing is the people in your business, the message that they're saying about the business when you hand them off to your client, to others in your business. Does it match up with the image that you put out there? A lot of these things are really essential and crucial. Obviously, technology is rapidly advancing, so websites become really defunct within a year or 2 or 3 if they're not really built up to last and then done correctly. There's a lot of outdated stuff out there. Are you getting really great client reviews? Trisha, I'm going to give you a homework assignment. Those 5 people that gave you reviews, testimonials, thankmonials, ask them to post that exact same thankmonial right on LinkedIn in your recommendations and referrals and reviews site. They were outstanding. Those should be lasting tributes to you and your business model. So go back and ask them, hey, do you mind posting that on LinkedIn? Boom, 5 raving fans on your website, on your LinkedIn. Must be working for her because she's smiling big time. So I offered her some value tonight. So ultimately, do you have a referral program? That's a good one, right? A lot of times I refer people to my clients all the time. I got a really cool $500 Visa gift card in the mail the other day from a longtime friend who I just gave a $25,000 job to by just simply introducing somebody. And she thanked me. She has a referral program. And I was like, that's not necessary. She's like, Eric, thank you. So it was great. I didn't need the money or anything. I just put it in my college kids fund or whatever, it's really cool. So do you have a spirit of hospitality, right? Making your team and your clients feel really special. So a lot of my teams, we put in this jackpot program if they hit their benchmarks, but does your team really have a spirit of hospitality? Is it evident when they show up with your clients? Does your brand and your identity really, truly, is it truly depictive of what you do and what your story is? What is your story, right? You gave a little bit of my story tonight about having been affiliated with Tony Robbins. If I were to really tell you my story with Tony and how it dramatically changed my life, you would understand my brand even better, right? But I don't have time for that tonight. But ultimately, those are the things in your sales and marketing. We've only got a few minutes left. I'm going to nail this really quick. You've got your people engine. So what is that? Culture is king. If you don't have a great culture in your company, then what are you really doing? Quality communication is when you say you're going to do something, you do it within a reasonable amount of time. If you're making a request of somebody within your company or you're offering something to a client, the response is a quality response. You're reality checking this. This is actually a protocol that I teach and I give to people. If you ask me for it, Patricia, in an email, I'll give it to you. I think you'll love it. Ultimately, do you train and motivate and inspire your team? You know, ultimately, everybody wants to feel valued. Do you have the same values on your team? Do they know what your values are? So if you say, I value impeccability with my clients, then everybody on your team needs to know what impeccability means. It means when we send them something, there's no typos in the document. It means that if we said we were going to get it out by Friday at 5, it's out by Friday at 5. And if it's not, then there's some really good communication with the client or within the team. So all these things are like huge when you talk about developing culture, having the right people in the right positions, right? Ultimately having agreements within your team about how we roll, how we do things, right? Sourcing and accountability is huge. This is how it works. Nothing happens unless you have accountability. You are the CEO of your company. Each branch within your company has a leader. Now, not every company has the same needs or the same models, but everybody has some level of technicians in their company or administrators in their company or a marketing branch. Sometimes that we outsource these things, right? We don't have them internally, but we outsource them, right? So ultimately, you evaluate a need and create a game plan for every one of these areas. Each one of these areas has a department leader where you make some declarations and requests of people per your game plan. And they say, yeah, I understand what your request is. You put a reasonable timeline in with reasonable expectations of what they need to do, how they need to do it. They already know the why. You've made that clear by the way your culture is in your business and the way you promote leadership within your business. Ultimately, when they know what the game plan is and you've got that written down with your SMART goals, you start to monitor it and you start to coach it. So ultimately, people ask me, like, you know, really, what is coaching? I'm flying through my slides now because I want to end this on a reasonable note. So this is really what of effective coaching is. My mantra is when I work with business owners is I want them to turn into coaches. Coaching is really powerful if it's done right. So there's lots of elements to coaching. This is the simplest model that I could portray it as. Always ask people what's working. Start off with that and give them an acknowledgement. Praise them. Let them know that they've done a great job. Look for reasons to connect with people and pull them in, right? Because now you've positioned it correctly, right? So always start off with this. Start off a team meeting with acknowledgements. Try to find one reason to praise everybody on your team every week, every quarter, whenever you sit down with them. And they will go to the end results for you if they feel valued, right? So this is how you coach. What's working? That's actually the question you ask people. Hey, what's working? Right? Or how's your week going? Whatever you want to ask, right? Acknowledge them. Then you have agreements in place. When I talked about agreements a minute ago, I didn't really illustrate that. Agreements are the cornerstones of your teamwork. They're the bonds. They're not office policies or procedures, but this is how we agree to work. We agree to talk about what's working and what's not working is an agreement, if that makes sense. We agree to always create value in the business. We always agree to connive, improve things. Just because we got it done doesn't mean it's always the way it's going to be, right? So the next set of questions is what's not working with you? The owner can actually start with themselves. Yeah, well, I said I was going to have that team meeting and I didn't do it. I didn't really follow through on my commitment to my team. It always starts with yourself. If it is to be, it begins with me. But if you're coaching somebody else, ask them what's not working for you right now, right? Help them to understand how you can provide support and direction towards the things that they're working on. Be a liaison for that, right? Help them center in on what's most important. And maybe they've got too much on their plate, so maybe you need to delegate. People feel really valued when you do that. What's not working with others, clients and team, what vendors, whatever that might be, what requests do you need to make of them, right? They said they were going to do this, this, and that, and they never did it. They didn't follow through on the protocol that we designed. I could give you 10 different examples of how I do this daily with clients. This is a really simple model that you can use right now with your team, with your clients. Hey, what's not working with that contract that we set up? You know, with the trust or with the estate or whatever type of law that you practice, or the marketing platform, right? Help me to understand, is it working for you? I have a team behind me. If I need to, I can put some attention there. That's that hospitality I was talking about. This is the type of language that you want to use with your clients and with your team to really get to where you want to go. Because when you do that, your vision's in place, your agreements are in place, you have quality relationships and communication around anything that you're doing. So this might sound theoretical, but this is what I do as a business development strategist. We look at those agreements that we need to have in place for these things to flourish. Who's doing what? When are they doing it? How are they doing it? Do we have clear communication in place? Is it supportive? Is it directional the way it needs to be? Does it ultimately support the vision? Remember, your vision is a philosophy and it's structured. So as you lay out your plan for 2022, for those areas that we addressed, that's what you want to be thinking of. So ultimately, I love this whole law of attraction thing. I mean, it speaks for itself. But I want to thank you, Lainey, for giving me this hour today. It looks like I ended right about on time. I really appreciate you giving me a platform to share. If anybody wants to know more about what I do, they can go to my website. I have a complimentary business growth assessment that anybody can take. They get a business growth score. It'll help them conceptualize where they are with their business along some of these lines, and it gives them a starting point as to where the gap is and where they might want to address it. I also am very happy to give a half an hour of complimentary time to help people understand that on a deeper level. If they don't become a client, no big deal. I'm all about giving and putting out that law of attraction, because maybe they'll know somebody else that says, hey, I know a couple people who might want that. So always happy to dedicate my time and my resources. I have a bunch of resources. So if either one of you has a question around developing some of these things that we talked about earlier or that I talked about, just ask. I'm happy to share a resource.